The unveiling, a sister's ancestry joke. It began, as so many profound shifts in life do, with something trivial, utterly mundane. A casual joke, a throwaway remark exchanged between a sister and her brother, blissfully unaware of the quiet earthquake rumbling beneath their feet. Alex and I, separated by only a few years, were lounging in the comfortable familiarity of our living room on a lazy Saturday afternoon. The soft clink of our seltzer bottles accompanied the desultory chatter, our eyes idly scrolling through the endless digital current of our phones. Suddenly, an advertisement surfaced, catching Alex's eye, a brightly colored promotional banner for heavily discounted consumer DNA tests. "Look at this," Alex chuckled, nudging me with his elbow. "Finally find out if we're secretly royalty or something. Or maybe I'll discover I'm part Neanderthal and qualify for a discount at the caveman-themed restaurant downtown." With a light-hearted shrug, he impulsively clicked, "Buy now." It was a gesture made with a half-serious laugh, a whimsical thought of uncovering some amusing ancestral quirk, perhaps a distant relative who was a famous historical figure, or unlocking a bizarre genetic coupon for a fictional lineage. Neither Alex nor I, nor anyone else in our seemingly ordinary suburban world, held any genuine expectation for a profound revelation. We certainly did not anticipate the quiet, seismic shift that would soon redefine our very understanding of family, identity, and the truth of our own lives. Weeks later, a nondescript email notification arrived, a mundane chime signaling that Alex's DNA test results were ready. He opened it with a casual shrug, a fleeting thought of the amusing ancestral chart he might soon share with me, maybe even teasing our parents about some surprising heritage. The colorful pie chart detailing his diverse ethnic origins was not the initial shock, nor was any unexpected geographical heritage that might have hinted at distant migrations or forgotten family branches. The true revelation lay in a single, stark line just below the graphic, clinical in its precision, simple in its language, and utterly definitive in its implication. Parent-child relationship, no match. ***. In that instant, the entire world seemed to tilt on its axis, the familiar ground beneath Alex's feet dissolving into an impossible, dizzying void. His breath hitched. This could not possibly be correct. It had to be a mistake, a glitch in the system, a mislabeled sample, anything but this. The glitch in the family code. Alex's immediate, visceral reaction to the stark clinical result of the DNA test was an overwhelming wave of disbelief, so profound that it bordered on outright denial. His fingers, now oddly clumsy and cold, compulsively refreshed the webpage again and again, as if the sheer force of his will could somehow conjure a different outcome, a more familiar, comforting truth. He logged out of the Ancestry website, then painstakingly logged back in, his heart hammering against his ribs with an insistent, frantic rhythm, convinced that a simple technical glitch or a fleeting internet error was solely responsible for such an utterly impossible finding. He checked his account details, the sample ID, everything he could think of, searching for the flaw, the reason for this absurd data point. But the result, cold and unyielding in its digital certainty, stubbornly remained unchanged. Biological father, none detected. ***. The very notion felt surreal, detached from any reality he had ever known. The man who had patiently taught him to tie his shoelaces, painstakingly showing him the bunny ears method, who had tirelessly worked to pay for his braces, ensuring his smile was perfect, who had calmly and steadily guided him through the daunting process of learning to drive a stick shift in the old family sedan, even when Alex stalled it repeatedly. That man, his father David, according to this clinical data, was now, definitively, not his biological father. The word impossible echoed relentlessly in the confines of his mind, a jarring, repetitive static that drowned out all other thoughts, refusing to be silenced. Every memory of his childhood, every shared laugh, every quiet moment with David, suddenly felt re-edited, viewed through a distorting lens of suspicion and doubt. His first desperate, almost frantic call was to me. His voice, I noticed, sounded strangely distant, thin. I, initially amused by Alex's apparent panic, listened patiently. "Dude, what's wrong? Did you find out you're 5% alien?" Alex tried to explain, stumbling over the words, the absurdity of it all. It says David's not my dad, like biologically. There was a pause on my end, a moment of silence where the lightheartedness evaporated. The conversation that ensued was initially a strained tapestry of nervous, brittle laughter, punctuated by long, uncomfortable silences. "Dude, maybe we were switched at birth," Alex joked, the words feeling utterly hollow and absurd as he spoke them, a futile attempt to inject levity into an increasingly heavy situation. But despite this forced lightness, the unsettling revelation gnawed relentlessly at both of us, a persistent, unyielding itch that couldn't be scratched. A brother confirmed, the echo of a secret. The initial shock, the almost comedic disbelief, slowly gave way to a deeper, more unsettling curiosity. The thought of Alex being switched at birth, while a convenient deflection, felt too far-fetched, too much like a movie plot. What if it wasn't a glitch? What if it was true? A morbid curiosity, a deep-seated, almost primal need to either confirm or unequivocally debunk this unsettling claim, began to snowball, gaining an unstoppable momentum within both of us. **1. Driven less by personal anxiety about my own lineage, and more by a robust sense of sisterly solidarity, and perhaps a desire to conclusively prove the initial result, a statistical fluke, to bring certainty back to our world, decided to take the same DNA test. I ordered the kit, sent off my sample, and settled into the uncomfortable waiting period, a quiet hum of unspoken tension permeating our daily lives. The days stretched into weeks. Then, the email arrived for me. I opened it with a strange mixture of dread and anticipation. The results were clear, and they delivered a second, far more profound and emotionally devastating shock. My test unequivocally confirmed a full, undeniable parent-child relationship with our father, David. The data, once again, was irrefutable. Alex and I were, beyond any shadow of a doubt, half-siblings, sharing the same mother, Sarah, but having distinct biological fathers. The confirmation of my paternity only solidified the impossibility of Alex's. It wasn't a lab error. It wasn't a mix-up. It was a truth that cut deeper than any fictional scenario. The silence before the storm. A strange, heavy, almost suffocating silence descended between us in the immediate aftermath of this second revelation. It was a silence far more potent and unsettling than any shouted argument, a quiet hum that seemed to amplify every past memory, every shared laugh, every family photograph displayed innocently on the mantelpiece. The sheer weight of this newly unearthed secret pressed down on us. Our minds, independently yet synchronously, began to rewind, compulsively replaying decades of family dinners, every childhood birthday candle blown out with David's guiding hand, every joyous father-daughter or father-son fishing trip, every quiet moment of advice. We searched desperately for subtle clues that had always been hidden in plain sight, veiled by years of presumed truth. Had there been a subtle difference in how David interacted with each of us? A fleeting glance, an unspoken word, a preference that had seemed benign then, but now felt loaded with meaning. I saw my own face, a clear echo of David's, and then looked at Alex, searching for the familiar contours that had always bound us. Alex, meanwhile, looked at David, then at his own reflection, seeking any feature, any shared gesture that might contradict the cold, hard data. The weight of this secret, suddenly unearthing itself from the very foundation of our lives, felt crushing. The path forward was unclear, but the next step felt utterly inevitable, a confrontation that could no longer be postponed, a conversation that demanded to be had, regardless of the destruction it might wreak. We knew we had to tell our parents, a father's long-held suspicion. The morning of the confrontation dawned gray and quiet, a stark contrast to the storm brewing within Alex and me. There was no dramatic shouting, no theatrical accusations. Instead, it was a quiet, early-morning knock on our parents' bedroom door, the aroma of freshly brewing coffee already permeating the air, a stark contrast to the tension that thickened the silence in the room. David, still in his dressing gown, his movements slow and deliberate, opened the door. Sarah, our mother, looked up from her morning tea, a faint frown creasing her brow at the unusual early visit. Alex, his face a carefully constructed mask of neutrality, handed his father the printout, folded precisely 4 times, without uttering a single word. I stood by my brother's side, a silent, supportive presence. David took the paper. His gaze, though unwavering, held a strange, almost knowing quality as he scanned the clinical lines. His hands, usually so steady, trembled almost imperceptibly as they held the sheet. He did not drop the paper. He read it once, then again, his eyes lingering on the stark "no match" line. His immediate and perhaps most startling response was not anger, nor was it a vehement defensive denial, which Alex and I had braced ourselves for. It was simply a sigh, a sound so profound, so deep, that it seemed to momentarily empty the entire room of air, leaving a vacuum where words should have been. Then came the soft, almost whispered words that cracked open decades of unspoken history, echoing with a quiet resignation that spoke of years of internal wrestling. "I guess I always wondered. Asterisk, asterisk." This single sentence, uttered with a profound weariness that settled over the room like dust, shattered the fragile dam of silence that had held back a lifetime of secrets. It suggested that David had carried an unspoken suspicion, a quiet, intuitive knowing for decades. Perhaps it was a subtle difference in Alex's features, a distinct set of mannerisms, or simply an indefinable feeling that had always whispered at the edge of his consciousness. He had chosen, perhaps out of love, perhaps out of a fierce loyalty to the family he built, to never voice it, to never allow it to disrupt the life they had painstakingly created. But now, the undeniable data had simply confirmed a truth he had long carried, silently, within himself. The genesis of a 30-year secret. Sarah, our mother, had remained silent during David's quiet revelation, her face pale, her hands clasped tightly. When David finally spoke, his admission seemed to unlock something within her. The full story, it turned out, was far from simple, far from clean, a tangled web woven from youth, insecurity, and a desperate desire for stability. Sarah began to speak, her voice low and raspy, the words coming in fits and starts, each one laden with the weight of 30 years. Decades ago, she explained, before their marriage had been solemnized, before the very foundations of their stable family life had been laid, David and Sarah had endured a brief but intensely cold and painful separation. It was a tumultuous period, marked by a fierce, unresolved argument, a betrayal of trust, and a silent, lonely week apart. Both were young, navigating the uncertainties of early adulthood, raw with emotion. During that tumultuous week, consumed by hurt and confusion, Sarah had a fleeting encounter with someone else. A man, she described, who had been a transient presence, a momentary comfort in a period of profound vulnerability. He vanished from her life as quickly and mysteriously as he had appeared, leaving behind only a blurred memory. He was a name she barely remembered, a face she could no longer conjure with clarity, a name without a face without a future. Soon after, David and Sarah reconciled, their love for each other drawing them back together, a silent promise to overcome their recent strife. She never told him about that brief, clandestine encounter during their separation. Perhaps she genuinely convinced herself that the biological timing was close enough, that the fleeting moment could be subsumed by the burgeoning reality of their renewed commitment. Or perhaps, more likely, she hoped with all her heart that biology would never truly matter when weighed against the countless bedtime stories she would read, the endlessly patched, scraped knees she would tend to, and the joyful chaos of backyard baseball games they would share as a family. For 30 years, her secret had held. For 30 years, it hadn't mattered. The life they built together had seemed to override the circumstances of Alex's conception. But now, the undeniable data, presented in neat, color-coded graphs, laid bare the truth, shattering the carefully constructed facade. Biology versus belonging. The revelation hung in the air, a palpable presence, forcing a profound reevaluation within the family. The man who was not biologically Alex's father was still the one who had tirelessly worked to pay for his college tuition, who had patiently fixed his broken bicycles countless times, who had calmly and steadily guided him through the daunting process of learning to drive a stick shift in the old family sedan, even when Alex stalled it repeatedly. He was the one who had shown up for every school play, every soccer game, every milestone that defined Alex's childhood. The man who was a biological father to one sibling but not the other. What was he now? Was he still a father in the truest sense? A stepfather? Or was he something entirely new, a complex familial role for which the English language seemed to have no adequate word, no established definition? The very concept of family suddenly felt fluid, open to interpretation. Was it defined by shared DNA, by the scientific certainty of genetic markers? Or was it forged in the crucible of shared experience, in the countless acts of love, sacrifice, and presence that constituted a lifetime of belonging? For Alex, the question of identity was paramount. Who was he, if not definitively David's son? And what did it mean for me to be the real daughter while my brother was not? The emotional weight of this duality pressed down on us all. Every interaction, every memory, now had a new, subtle filter applied. The laughter seemed a little less carefree, the silences a little more profound. The comfort of our suburban home, once a bastion of certainty, now hummed with the quiet tension of an unspoken redefinition. The ripple effect. Family whispers. The revelation, once confined to the four walls of our living room, could not be contained indefinitely. Like ripples in a pond, the truth began to spread, slowly at first, then gaining momentum. The extended family, once a seemingly impenetrable, tightly knit structure, was now permeated by subtle, pervasive whispers, hushed phone calls, and knowing glances at gatherings. Aunts began to speculate, their voices low and urgent, while uncles, with furrowed brows, recalculated decades-old timelines in their heads, their expressions thoughtful and perhaps a little suspicious as they recalled past events. Old arguments, once dismissed as petty squabbles or typical family eccentricities, suddenly gained new, sharper meanings in the revised narrative of our family history. No wonder he always favored him, some might have murmured, the quiet judgment hanging in the air, attaching new significance to old dynamics. That explains the tension at Christmas that one year, others pondered, projecting newly acquired knowledge onto old, innocent events, seeking patterns where none had been obvious before. Whether these interpretations were genuine recollections of perceived slights or mere projections born of hindsight, fueled by the sensational nature of the revelation, the knowledge, once unleashed, could not be undone. It altered the very fabric of our extended relationships, introducing a new layer of complexity and speculation into what was once assumed to be straightforward. The quiet assumptions of generations crumbled under the weight of a single scientific truth. Brotherhood forged in revelation. Yet, strangely, amidst this quiet chaos, amidst the reevaluation and the whispers, Alex and I found ourselves growing closer than ever before. The shared, extraordinary experience of this profound discovery, the joint weight of the secret revealed, forged a new, deeper, almost sacred connection between us. We were bonded not by identical strands of DNA connecting us to David, but by the shared, surreal weight of our personal earthquake, a truth that had shaken the very foundations of our identity. ****. This unexpected unity became our anchor in a turbulent ****. We exchanged late-night phone calls, often lasting for hours, punctuated by the kind of dark, gallows humor only we could share, a coping mechanism for the incomprehensible. We made jokes about being genetic anomalies, about needing to reevaluate our entire lives, about the absurdity of biology. Our text messages, sent at odd hours, often read, "Half a brother still means full pain in the ass," a tender, humorous acknowledgement of our redefined bond. This rapid shift to shared jokes and a new, deeper intimacy suggested a powerful, pre-existing fraternal bond, one capable of not only withstanding such a fundamental, identity-shattering shock, but paradoxically, being strengthened by it. We found a unique form of solidarity and understanding, a new common ground forged in the midst of unraveling truths. Our laughter, though sometimes brittle, was genuine, a testament to a connection that transcended mere bloodlines. The mother's unburdening. The mother's full, unburdened story arrived slowly, not in one dramatic confession, but in fragile, fragmented pieces, delivered over many quiet conversations in hushed tones. Sarah began to speak more openly, her initial weariness giving way to a profound, quiet strength as she finally shared the complete tapestry of her past. There was no defensiveness in her tone, no overt shame, only a profound, almost bone-deep exhaustion from carrying the secret for so long. She spoke of her youth, of being profoundly unsure, of the overwhelming pressure to conform to societal expectations, and of her deep-seated conviction that some secrets could remain buried, for the sake of peace, for the sake of the family she so desperately wanted to build and protect. She described the fear that had consumed her in those early days after reconciling with David, fear of judgment, fear of losing him, fear of disrupting the fragile new beginning they were building. She had convinced herself that the fleeting moment, the single night, could be subsumed by the burgeoning reality of their renewed commitment, that it was a private error that didn't need to infect their future. It was a decision, she explained, made from a place of intense fear, a choice that both ultimately unraveled decades later with the arrival of a DNA test and, paradoxically, proved the enduring, resilient strength of the very family she had so painstakingly built through years of quiet devotion. There was a quiet dignity in her confession, a woman finally unburdening herself of a weight she had carried for far too long, accepting the consequences with grace. The enduring question of fatherhood. Publicly, the raw, uncomfortable truth remained confined strictly to the innermost family circle. No headlines, no viral social media posts. But within that circle, every interaction, every glance, every word now carried a new, subtle, almost imperceptible weight. Father's Day, once a simple, uncomplicated celebration, felt undeniably different. The shared gifts, the familiar breakfast, the laughter, all were present, but imbued with a new, quiet complexity. The simple, heartfelt words, "I love you," at the end of phone calls now felt heavier, not diminished in their sincerity, but imbued with a complex new layer of meaning, a bittersweet echo of all that had been revealed. The father himself, David, remained the most enigmatic figure in this evolving drama. He never expressed anger, never demanded detailed explanations beyond Sarah's initial confession, never uttered a single word of blame towards her or Alex. His composure was remarkable, his love unwavering. His only question, delivered softly, with a profound tenderness that echoed through the quiet rooms, was, "Am I less your father today than I was yesterday?" Asterisk, asterisk. It was a question that no DNA test, no scientific data, no genealogical chart could ever truly answer. Because while biology possesses the power to draw precise, unyielding lines, to categorize and define genetic lineage, it can never truly erase the indelible marks of shared memories, the countless moments of quiet affection, the tireless dedication, and the lifetime of unconditional love that had undeniably bound them together. David's presence, his quiet strength, and his unwavering devotion continued to define fatherhood for Alex, far beyond the confines of a genetic match. The unopened door to a biological past months slipped into a new rhythm, a quiet, almost imperceptible hum. The initial blinding shock began to settle into a fragile, unfamiliar normal. Life, in its stubborn way, continued. Yet for Alex, driven by a persistent, nagging curiosity, bordering on a quiet obsession, the question of his biological father lingered. He felt an almost magnetic pull to understand, to see if there was a face, a story, behind the clinical no match. Through discreet online searches, cross-referencing public records, he eventually managed to track down the mystery biological father. A name, an address 2 states away, a spectral figure from a past he had never known existed. The envelope, containing this new, potentially life-altering information, the name, the address, maybe a phone number, sat on his dresser for weeks, a silent, weighty moral dilemma. He picked it up, turned it over in his hands, imagined the possible scenarios. "Do you truly open that door?" he pondered endlessly. What if, on the other side, stood a man utterly uninterested, with no space in his life for a sudden adult son, no desire, no obligation to answer for choices made decades before memory even began to form? What if opening that door diminished the profound, if complicated, love he now shared with David, me, and Sarah? In the end, after much internal deliberation, after countless hours of quiet reflection and conversation with me, the envelope remained sealed, its secrets unspoken, its potential future unwritten. The story of this family closes not on definitive, neatly tied answers, not on a dramatic meeting with a stranger, but on 3 people, David, Alex, and me, sitting quietly on our back porch as the sun dipped below the horizon, drinks clinking softly in our hands. We watched the vibrant colors spread across the sky, a sunset that none of us had biologically built, yet one we undeniably, profoundly still shared. The family, redefined by a truth that had once threatened to shatter it into fragments, ultimately chose to lean into the bonds forged by shared experience, by resilience, by enduring love, rather than solely by the unyielding lines of genetic code. Their journey, complicated and painful as it was, had proven that sometimes the family you cultivate, the family you choose to nourish through decades of life's complexities and challenges, truly matters more and endures more powerfully than the family you simply map.